The phone rang at 3:47 inches the morning. I knew before I answered it nothing good comes from a call at that hour. My hand shook as I reached across the nightstand, knocking over the reading glasses I'd left there. The caller ID showed a Montana area code I didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Morrison? Richard Morrison? Yes, this is Richard Morrison. My throat felt dry, heart pounding against my ribs. This is Dr. Patricia Chen from Yellowstone Psychiatric Hospital in Billings, Montana. I apologize for calling at this hour, but this is regarding your son, Michael. The room tilted. I sat up too fast, blood rushing from my head. My son? I don't understand. There must be some mistake. Is your son Michael David Morrison, born March 15th, 1978? Yes, but Mr. Morrison, your son is here, at our facility. He was brought in 3 days ago by state police, after a situation in Helena. We've been trying to identify him, and his fingerprints finally came back through the system this afternoon. I couldn't breathe. The words weren't making sense. Ma'am, I don't know what kind of mistake this is, but my son died 26 years ago. We buried him in September 2001. There was a pause on the other end, papers rustling. Mr. Morrison, I understand this must be shocking, but the fingerprint match is definitive. The man we have here is Michael David Morrison. He's alive. The phone slipped from my hand. I caught it, fumbling. That's impossible. They found his body. They identified him. I planned his funeral. I carried his coffin. My voice broke. My wife died of a broken heart 5 years ago because our son was dead. I realize how this sounds, Mr. Morrison. Believe me, I've been reviewing the case files all evening trying to understand it myself. But I need you to come to Billings. Your son is here, and he needs you. He needs me? I was shouting now, something I never did. Where was he for 26 years? Why didn't he call? Why didn't he come home? Dr. Chen's voice softened. Mr. Morrison, I think those are conversations you need to have with him, but I should tell you, he doesn't remember. Your son has retrograde amnesia. He doesn't remember you, your wife, his childhood, or how he ended up in Montana. He doesn't even remember his own name. Until those fingerprints came back, we had no idea who he was. I don't remember much of what came after that call. I know I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at Margaret's photograph on the dresser. The one from our 40th anniversary, just 2 years before the cancer took her. She'd been hollowed out by then, not from the disease, but from losing Michael. I'd watched her die twice, once when they told us they'd found his body, and again 6 years ago when her heart finally gave up. He's alive, Maggie, I whispered to the photograph. Our boy is alive. But even as I said it, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't let myself believe it. I called my daughter Sarah at 6 in the morning. She lived in Denver, now with her husband and 2 kids. She was Michael's younger sister. Barely remembered him. She'd been only 10 when he disappeared. Dad, what's wrong? Sarah, I need you to sit down. Oh God, is it your heart? I told you to take those medications? It's not me. It's about Michael. Silence. Then, Dad, please don't do this. Not again. We've been through this before. She was right. We had been through it before. 3 years after Michael's funeral, someone claimed they'd seen him in Seattle. I'd driven 18 hours straight, searched every shelter and soup kitchen in the city, showed his photo to 1,000 strangers. It had been someone who looked like him, someone who wasn't my son. This is different. The hospital has his fingerprints. It's him, Sarah. Fingerprints from where? Dad, Michael is buried in Fairview Cemetery. We visit him every Memorial Day. I know what we buried, sweetheart, but I'm telling you, a psychiatric hospital in Montana has our boy, and they've positively identified him. I'm flying out there today. Then I'm coming with you. No, you have the kids, and Brandon needs you for that work thing this week. I'll call you when I know more. I could hear her crying. Dad, please be careful. I can't lose you too, if this turns out to be. I can't go through it again. I'll be careful. I love you, honey. I love you too. I booked a flight leaving Minneapolis at noon, connecting through Denver. While I waited for the Uber to the airport, I went down to the basement. to the boxes I hadn't opened in years, the ones Margaret had carefully packed and labeled in her precise handwriting, Michael's things. I pulled out the photo albums first. Michael at age 5, missing his 2 front teeth, holding up the first fish he'd ever caught, a tiny sunfish we'd thrown back. Michael at 12, awkward and gangly, standing next to me at the shop where I'd worked as a mechanic. Michael at 16 with his first girlfriend, both of them so young it hurt to look at. Michael at 20, his last birthday before everything fell apart. There were other things in those boxes. His high school Letterman jacket, a baseball signed by the twins, a coffee mug I'd bought him that said "World's Okayest Son." He'd laughed so hard when he opened it Christmas morning, 1997. That was the last Christmas we had together. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in old newspaper, I found what I was looking for, the fishing lure. Michael had made it himself when he was 14, after I'd shown him how to tie flies for trout fishing. But Michael, being Michael, he couldn't just follow the pattern. He'd invented his own design, using feathers from a pheasant we'd hunted and some shiny material from Margaret's sewing kit. He'd used a specific knot I'd taught him, a surgeon's knot, that I'd learned from my own father. Michael had been so proud of that lure. Said it was going to catch the biggest trout in Minnesota. It never did. But he'd kept it in his tackle box, always saved it for special occasions. After he disappeared, I'd found it in his apartment, sitting on his dresser like some kind of talisman. I put it in my pocket. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if it really was him, if by some miracle my son was alive, he'd remember this. He'd remember learning to tie that knot. He'd remember his father's hands guiding his, showing him how to make the line secure. The flight was 4 hours of agony. I couldn't read, couldn't watch the movie, just sat there, staring out the window at clouds, thinking about April 1999. Michael had been living in Anchorage, working on the North Slope oil fields. Good money, he'd said. He wanted to save up, maybe buy a house, settle down. He'd met a girl up there, Jessica something. I never met her. He'd called us every Sunday like clockwork, telling us about the midnight sun, about the bears he'd seen, about how different Alaska was from Minnesota. Then, one Sunday, the call didn't come. We waited, told ourselves he was busy, working a double shift. Phone was dead. But Monday came and went. Tuesday. By Wednesday, Margaret was calling the police in Anchorage, calling his employer, calling everyone we could think of. His supervisor said Michael had been hiking in Denali National Park on his days off. Said he'd told people he was going to spend a few days in the backcountry, do some solo camping. When he didn't show up for his shift the following Monday, they'd reported it to the Park Service. The search lasted 3 weeks. They found his campsite, his gear, his truck at the trailhead. But no Michael. The park rangers said it happened. Sometimes people got lost, fell into ravines, were attacked by bears, hypothermia, any number of things. The wilderness up there was unforgiving. Bodies weren't always found. We flew up there, spent 2 months in Alaska, searching ourselves when the official search was called off. Margaret walked until her feet bled. I talked to every ranger, every hiker, every guide who might have seen something. Nothing. We came home in July, broken. Then in September 2001, 4 months after 9/11, I remember because the world was falling apart in more ways than one, the Alaska State Troopers called. They'd found remains, a body, severely decomposed, found by hunters about 15 miles from where Michael's campsite had been. The location made sense. Someone injured or disoriented could have wandered that direction. The identification was difficult. The body had been there too long. Dental records were inconclusive because much of the skull was damaged, possibly by animals. But there were other factors. The height matched. The build matched. Michael had broken his left arm when he was 9, falling off his bike, and the body showed signs of an old fracture in the same location. His clothes were mostly rotted, but they found remnants of a jacket we recognized, and a waterproof bag with his wallet inside, though the ID card was degraded. They told us the identification was about 75% certain, said that was as good as they could do given the condition of the remains. We could wait for DNA testing, they said, but that would take months, and there was no guarantee of results from such degraded samples. Margaret couldn't wait months. She needed closure, needed to bring our boy home and lay him to rest properly. So we said yes, we agreed. Those were Michael's remains, and we wanted to bury him. The funeral was in September 2001. Closed casket, obviously. Half the town came. Michael had been popular, good athlete, friendly kid, the kind of son who helped elderly neighbors with their groceries and always said please and thank you. The church was packed. Sarah had cried so hard she'd made herself sick. I'd stood at that grave, and I'd said goodbye to my son. Told him I was sorry we couldn't find him in time. Sorry we couldn't bring him home alive. I'd promised to take care of his mother. Promised to remember him every day. And I had, for 26 years, I'd kept that promise. So how could he be alive? The plane landed in Billings at 6 in the evening. I rented a car and drove straight to Yellowstone Psychiatric Hospital. It was a low, sprawling facility on the edge of town, surrounded by Montana's endless sky. The mountains in the distance were dusted with early snow. Dr. Chen met me in the lobby. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and tired lines around her mouth. Mr. Morrison, thank you for coming so quickly. Where is he? Before you see him, we need to talk. Please, come to my office. I followed her down a corridor that smelled like industrial cleaner and something else I couldn't name. Her office was small, cluttered with files and medical textbooks. She gestured to a chair. I need to prepare you for what you're about to see. Your son has been through severe trauma. We don't know the details yet because he can't tell us. But based on physical evidence, he's been living rough for some time. Malnutrition, untreated injuries, signs of long-term stress. Living rough where? Where has he been? We don't know. State police found him on the outskirts of Helena, sleeping in an abandoned building. He'd gotten into an altercation with some other homeless individuals. When the police approached, he became agitated, confused. They brought him here for evaluation. Is he mentally ill? He has significant memory loss, yes. Retrograde amnesia, as I mentioned on the phone. But underneath that, he appears cognitively intact. He can speak normally, reason normally, perform complex tasks. The amnesia seems to be related to psychological trauma rather than brain damage, though we're still running tests. Does he know who I am? Does he know I'm coming? Dr. Chen shook her head. I told him we'd located family, but he has no memory of you. Mr. Morrison, I want to be very clear about something. The man in that room doesn't remember being Michael Morrison. He doesn't remember his childhood, his mother, you, any of it. To him, his life began about 10 years ago, when he woke up in what he describes as the woods somewhere. Everything before that is gone. Can it come back? The memories? Sometimes, with the right triggers, some memories can resurface. But there's no guarantee. You need to be prepared for the possibility that your son will never remember his life before the amnesia. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I understood. How do you prepare for something like that? I need to see him. Of course. But Mr. Morrison, Richard, please manage your expectations. This is going to be difficult. She led me through more corridors, through locked doors that required her badge to open. We ended up in what looked like a common area, with old couches and a television playing with the sound off. A few patients sat around, some staring at nothing, some playing cards. Dr. Chen touched my arm. He's over there, by the window. I looked where she was pointing. There was a man standing with his back to us, looking out at the parking lot. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing donated clothes that didn't quite fit. Dark hair shot through with gray. His posture was familiar in a way that made my chest ache. Michael? The man turned around. It was him, and it wasn't him. The face was older, weathered in a way that 26 years of normal aging couldn't account for. There were scars, one above his left eyebrow, another along his jaw. His eyes, once bright blue, looked faded, guarded. But the shape of his face, the way he held his head, slightly tilted when he was uncertain about something that was my son. Hello, he said carefully. His voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher. They said you're my father? I couldn't speak, just nodded. He studied me like I was a stranger. which I was, to him. I'm sorry, I don't remember you. That's okay. That's okay, son. They said my name is Michael Morrison. Is that right? Yes. Michael David Morrison. You were born March 15th, 1978, in Minneapolis. You're 47 years old. He repeated the information like he was trying to memorize it. 47. And you're Richard Morrison. I'm your father, yes. Do I have a mother? The question broke something in me. You did. Margaret. She passed away 5 years ago. She believed you were dead. We both did. His face showed nothing. No recognition, no grief, no surprise. I'm sorry for your loss. Michael, what happened to you? Where have you been? I don't know, he said it flatly, like he'd said it 1,000 times before. I don't remember anything before about 10 years ago. I woke up in a forest. I don't know what state, what year, anything. I was injured, my head hurt, and I had wounds on my arms and legs. I walked until I found a road, then followed it. Eventually found a town. What town? I don't remember the name. Somewhere in Idaho, maybe? Or Wyoming? I moved around a lot. Did odd jobs for cash. Stayed in shelters when I could. Slept outside when I couldn't. For 10 years? Michael, why didn't you go to the police? Try to find out who you were. His jaw tightened. I did, at first. But when you don't have ID, when you can't tell them where you're from or what your name is, they don't take you seriously. They think you're on drugs or crazy. So, I stopped trying. Figured whoever I was before. They either didn't want to find me or couldn't. I learned to survive on my own. Dr. Chen stepped forward. We've been able to piece together a bit more from his fingerprints. Michael, your prints were in multiple law enforcement databases, not for crimes, but from background checks. Apparently, you worked in Alaska on oil fields, which required security clearance. Alaska, Michael repeated. I was in Alaska? You disappeared there in April 1999. From Denali National Park, we searched for you for months. He looked at me with those faded blue eyes. I'm sorry you went through that. Don't apologize. Just help me understand. Do you remember Alaska at all? Do you remember anything about your life before? No, nothing. It's just blank. Like I didn't exist before I woke up in those woods. We talked for another hour. Dr. Chen asked if I had photographs, and I pulled out the albums I'd brought in my carry-on. We sat together on one of the old couches, and I showed him pictures of his life. That's you at 5 years old. You'd just caught your first fish. He studied the photo. I look happy. You loved fishing. We used to go every weekend in the summer. I don't remember. That's you at your high school graduation. You played baseball. See the uniform? What position? Pitcher. You were good. Scouts came to watch you play. Did I go pro? No. You chose college instead. University of Minnesota. You studied mechanical engineering, like me. He touched the photograph gently. You're a mechanical engineer? I'm retired now. But yes, I worked as a mechanic for 40 years. Did I finish college? No. You dropped out after 2 years. Said you needed to make money, help with the family. You went to work in Alaska, and that's where I disappeared. Yes. He closed the album carefully. I wish I could remember. I can see it's important to you. It's not about me, son. It's about you. Don't you want to know who you were? I don't know if that person exists anymore. Whoever Michael Morrison was 26 years ago, he's not me now. I'm just someone else. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he was still my son no matter what. But looking at him, this stranger with my son's face, I wasn't sure he was wrong. Dr. Chen arranged for me to stay at a hotel nearby. She said Michael needed time to process everything, and pushing too hard, too fast could be harmful. But she agreed to let me visit the next morning. I barely slept. Kept seeing that blank look in his eyes when I showed him pictures of his own life. Kept hearing him say, I don't remember, in that flat, empty voice. At 7 in the morning, I drove back to the hospital. A different doctor met me, younger man, Dr. Samuel Reed, who specialized in trauma and memory. Mr. Morrison, we've been reviewing Michael's case through the night. Something doesn't add up. What do you mean? We ran a full medical workup. Michael has several old injuries, broken ribs that healed improperly, scarring consistent with prolonged physical restraint, signs of long-term malnutrition. But here's what's interesting. He also has evidence of professional medical care. Surgical scars from procedures that would have been done in a hospital, not in the wilderness. Dental work that's been maintained relatively well. Someone was taking care of him, at least intermittently. I don't understand. He said he's been homeless for 10 years. That may be what he believes. But the evidence suggests something else. We contacted the FBI this morning. Given the circumstances of his disappearance and reappearance, they're interested in investigating. There's a possibility your son was involved in something unusual. Like what? Dr. Reed hesitated. We don't want to speculate until we have more information. But off the record, some of Michael's medical indicators are consistent with patterns we've seen in witness protection cases that went wrong. Witness protection? Michael was 21 when he disappeared. What could he possibly have witnessed? We don't know. But the FBI is sending someone to interview him, with your permission, of course. As his next of kin, I gave permission. What else could I do? The FBI agent arrived that afternoon. Special Agent Diana Torres, mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She interviewed Michael for 3 hours while I waited in the hallway. When she emerged, she looked troubled. Mr. Morrison, I can't share details of an ongoing investigation, but I can tell you this. We believe your son may have been placed in protective custody in 1999 and that something went catastrophically wrong. We're pulling files from that period to see if we can find any record of him. Protective custody from what? We'll be in touch as soon as we know more. In the meantime, Dr. Chen has cleared Michael for discharge into your care, if you're willing to take him. He'll need ongoing psychiatric treatment and support. Of course I'll take him. He's my son. Mr. Morrison, I need to be clear. The man in that room may never remember being your son. You need to be prepared for that reality. I don't care if he remembers. He's alive. That's what matters. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Was it enough to have him back if he was a stranger? If he looked at me without recognition? If every memory we'd shared was gone? I spent the afternoon making arrangements. Called Sarah, told her what I'd learned. Called a real estate agent in Minneapolis. Told her I needed to keep my house accessible for at least 6 more months while we figured things out. Called my insurance company to add Michael back onto my policy, a conversation that involved a lot of confused questions about how my dead son was now alive. That evening, Dr. Chen brought Michael to a family meeting room. We're going to discharge him tomorrow morning, she said. He'll need follow-up care, and I'm recommending a psychiatrist in Minneapolis who specializes in trauma and memory disorders. But medically, he's stable. Michael sat quietly through all of this, his face expressionless. Do I have a choice? He asked suddenly. Can I decide not to go with him? The question stung, but I understood it. I was a stranger to him. Yes, Dr. Chen said. You're not being held here. You can leave whenever you want, but you have no ID, no money, no resources. Your father is offering you a home, support, help finding out who you were. It's up to you whether you accept that. Michael looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since we'd met. Why would you want me? I don't remember you. I don't feel like your son, because you are my son. And I've been grieving you for 26 years. Even if you never remember, even if you never feel like my son again, I need to try. I need to help you. That's what fathers do. He was quiet for a long time. Then, okay, I'll come with you. We flew back to Minneapolis 2 days later. The flight was awkward, full of stilted attempts at conversation. I tried to tell him stories about his childhood, but every anecdote hit the wall of his blank memory. Eventually, I gave up, and we sat in silence. Sarah met us at the airport with her husband Brandon and the kids. She'd been crying. I could see her red eyes even from a distance. When she saw Michael, she let out a sound I'll never forget, half sob and half laugh, and ran to him. Michael! Oh my God, Michael! He stood stiffly as she hugged him, arms at his sides. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I don't remember you. Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm your sister. Sarah, you used to call me Squirt because I was so much shorter than you. I'm sorry. No, no, don't apologize. You're here. You're alive. That's what matters. But I could see the hurt in her eyes when he didn't return her hug. We drove to my house in South Minneapolis, the house where Michael had grown up. I'd wondered if anything would trigger a memory. The familiar streets, the house itself, the room that had been his. But as we pulled into the driveway, he just looked at it all like he was seeing it for the first time, because he was. This is home, I said. Your home, he corrected. I don't remember it. I'd kept his room mostly intact, despite Margaret's attempts over the years to turn it into a guest room. His old bed was still there, his dresser, even some of his posters on the wall bands he'd liked. Sports teams, a National Geographic map of Alaska that now felt like a cruel joke. You can stay here, I said, or we can set up the guest room if this feels weird. He walked around the room, touching things carefully. His old baseball trophies, a model airplane he'd built when he was 12, a photograph of him and his high school girlfriend at prom. It's like a museum, he said. A museum of someone else's life. It's your life, Michael. No, he said quietly. It was his life, Michael Morrison's life. I don't know who I am, but I'm not that person anymore. Over the next few weeks, we fell into an uneasy routine. Michael met with a psychiatrist. Dr. Chen had recommended Dr. Lisa Hartman, who specialized in dissociative disorders and traumatic amnesia. He went 3 times a week. He also met with the FBI several times as they investigated what had happened to him. Agent Torres finally called me in for a meeting in late January. She looked exhausted. We found him, she said, in the files. Michael Morrison was placed in witness protection in May 1999, 1 month after he disappeared from Denali. What? Why? He witnessed something while working on the North Slope. A conversation between 2 executives at the oil company discussing illegal environmental dumping and payoffs to federal regulators. He reported it, and the FBI took him into protective custody while we investigated. The case was huge. Federal corruption, environmental crimes, millions of dollars. Then why didn't you tell us? Why did we think he was dead? Agent Torres looked down at her hands. Because someone in the Marshal Service screwed up, badly. Michael was supposed to be in a safe house in Oregon under a new identity. But there was a leak. The people he was testifying against found him. In June 1999, there was an incident. The safe house was attacked. 2 marshals were killed. Michael escaped, but was injured. He ran. And then what? We don't know. He disappeared. When we searched for him, we assumed he'd been killed too. The Marshal's Service conducted an internal investigation, but they never found a body, and Michael never surfaced. Eventually, the case was closed. The executives he would have testified against walked because without him, we didn't have enough evidence. So, the body we buried wasn't your son. We don't know whose body it was. The identification was sloppy. We know that now. But in 2001, with the methods available and the pressure to close cases, mistakes happened. I felt sick. My wife died thinking her son was dead. She never got to know he was alive. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison. If it's any consolation, we're reopening the case against those executives. With Michael's testimony now, he doesn't remember. He can't testify to something he doesn't remember. I know. We're hoping his memory comes back. Dr. Hartman thinks with the right triggers, some of it might. But weeks passed, and nothing triggered. Michael went to therapy, took the medications. Dr. Hartman prescribed, tried hypnosis at one point, but the memories stayed locked away. He was polite, cooperative, present in body but absent in spirit. He lived in my house like a boarder, not a son. Sarah tried too. She brought the kids over every weekend, showed him videos of family gatherings, told him stories about growing up together. He listened patiently but remained distant. Her youngest, Emma, was 6 and kept asking why Uncle Michael didn't remember her. His brain is sick, honey, Sarah would say. But he's getting better. Except he wasn't getting better. He was just there. February came, cold and gray. Michael had been back almost 3 months. and I'd started to lose hope that I'd ever really have my son back. I'd regained his body, but his soul was still lost, somewhere in those 26 years. One Saturday morning, I got up early to make coffee. I'd always been an early riser, and old habits died hard. I was surprised to find Michael already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the snow. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. "I don't sleep much. Bad dreams. Want to talk about them? I don't remember them when I wake up." I poured us both coffee. We sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that had become normal between us, comfortable in its discomfort. "Do you fish?" I asked suddenly. He looked up. "What?" "Fish. Do you fish?" "I mean, now. Currently." "I don't know. I've never tried. Not that I remember, anyway." "Want to?" "It's February. And snowing. Ice fishing. It's a Minnesota tradition. You used to love it." He hesitated. "I don't remember loving it." "I know, but maybe you could try it again. See if you like it now." I'm not sure why I pushed. Maybe I was tired of tiptoeing around him. Maybe I just needed to do something, anything, that felt like being a father again. "Okay," he said finally. "Sure, why not?" We drove up to Lake Minnetonka, about 40 minutes outside the city. I'd kept all my ice fishing gear in the garage, insulated shelter, auger, tip-ups, the whole setup. Michael helped me load it into the truck without being asked, his movements efficient and practiced in a way that suggested muscle memory, even if his conscious mind didn't remember. The lake was busy for a Saturday morning. Dozens of ice houses dotted the frozen surface, people hunched over holes with their lines in the water. I found a good spot away from the crowds and started setting up. "Hand me that auger," I said, and Michael passed it to me without hesitation. We drilled holes, set up the shelter, got our lines ready. I'd brought sandwiches and a thermos of hot chocolate. We sat on our buckets and waited for the fish to bite. "This is it?" Michael asked after a while. "We just sit here? That's fishing. You used to say it was the most boring and best thing at the same time." "Why both?" "Because it's boring enough that you have to talk to each other. No distractions. Just you and the person you're with, and the waiting." He thought about that. "Did we do this a lot? You and me?" "Every winter. From the time you were 6 until you left for Alaska. Some of my best memories are sitting on a frozen lake with you, talking about nothing and everything. Tell me about one." So I did. I told him about the time when he was 12 and caught a northern pike so big it pulled him halfway across the ice before I could grab him. Told him about the year we got caught in a blizzard and had to shelter in the ice house for 6 hours until it passed. Told him about the last time we'd fished together, the winter before he left for Alaska, when he'd told me about his girlfriend Jessica and how he thought he might be in love. Michael listened without comment. When I finished, he said, "I wish I could remember that. It sounds nice." It was. We fished for another hour in silence. Then Michael's tip-up flag popped, and we scrambled to pull in the line. It was a decent walleye, maybe 3 pounds. "Not bad," I said. "You've still got the touch." "I didn't do anything. The fish just bit." "You set the hook right. Good instincts." He held the fish carefully, the way I'd taught him decades ago, supporting its weight properly, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not recognition exactly, but something. Familiarity. Comfort. "I think I like this," he said quietly. "Fishing. It feels right." It wasn't much, but it was something. We fished until the sun started to set, caught 4 more walleye, and threw back a couple of small perch. On the drive home, Michael was more talkative than he'd been in months, asking questions about fishing, about the lake, about Minnesota winters, not about his past, but about now, about the present we were living in. That night, after he'd gone to bed, I went down to the basement again, to those boxes. I found the fishing lure I'd brought to Montana, but never shown him, the one he'd made when he was 14. Sunday morning, I knocked on his door. "Come in." He was sitting on his bed, reading a book Dr. Hartman had recommended about trauma and memory. "I have something for you," I said. I held out the lure. He took it, turned it over in his hands. "What is this?" "You made it. When you were 14, you invented your own fly pattern. used materials you shouldn't have used, but it worked. You were so proud of it. He studied the feathers, the shiny thread, the careful wrapping. This is good work. Clean knots. You used a surgeon's knot. I taught you that. My father taught me, and I taught you. He was quiet, still looking at the lure. His fingers traced the knot, and then he did something that made my heart stop. He started untying it, his fingers moving with practiced confidence, undoing the knot and then retying it the same way. Perfectly, without thinking about it. How did you know how to do that? I asked. He looked up, startled. I don't know. My hands knew. That's muscle memory, Michael. Your body remembers even if your mind doesn't. He stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Then he closed his eyes and pressed the lure against his palm. There was a man, he said slowly, showing me how to do this. I can't see his face, but I can see his hands. Big hands, with grease under the nails. He's patient. He lets me try again when I mess up, he says. He says, that's it, Mikey. You've got it. My throat closed. That was me. That's what I called you, Mikey. Michael opened his eyes, and they were wet. I remember you teaching me this. Just this moment. It's fuzzy, but it's there. Your hands guiding mine. The smell of your cologne. You were wearing a green flannel shirt. I wore that shirt for years. It was my favorite. He looked at me, really looked at me. And for the first time since Montana, I saw my son looking back. Dad? He said, and his voice broke on the word. I pulled him into a hug, and this time he hugged back. Hard. Like he was holding on for dear life. I'm here, son. I'm right here. I don't remember everything. I still don't remember most of it. But I remember that moment. I remember you teaching me. I remember feeling safe. You are safe. You're home. We stayed like that for a long time. This broken man and his father, holding on to each other in a bedroom that was both familiar and strange. It wasn't the reunion I'd imagined when I first got that call from Montana. It wasn't a miracle of complete memory recovery. It wasn't a happy ending tied up with a bow. But it was real, and it was ours, and it was enough. Over the following months, more memories surfaced. Small things, triggered by unexpected moments. The smell of Margaret's perfume on an old scarf made him remember her humming while she cooked. A song on the radio brought back a fragment of a road trip we'd taken when he was 8. The taste of a specific brand of root beer sparked a memory of summer days at the pool. The big memories, Alaska, the witness protection. What happened during those 26 years, those stayed locked away. Dr. Hartman said they might never come back, that his mind was protecting him from something too traumatic to process. The FBI closed their investigation without his testimony, but Agent Torres said she'd keep digging into what went wrong with his protection. Sarah's kids started calling him Uncle Mike, and slowly, he stopped flinching when they hugged him. He got a job working at an auto repair shop. His hands remembered how to fix engines even if his mind didn't remember learning. He moved into an apartment nearby, not quite ready to be fully independent, but not wanting to live in his childhood bedroom forever. Some days were harder than others. He still had nightmares he couldn't remember. Still, sometimes looked at family photos with complete blankness. Still didn't feel like the Michael Morrison from those pictures. But he was becoming someone. Someone new, built from fragments of the past and pieces of the present. Not the son I'd lost, exactly, but not a stranger either. Something in between, something that was enough. 1 year after that first phone call, on a cold February morning, we went ice fishing again. Michael brought his own gear this time, including the lure he'd made as a teenager. We sat on our buckets, lines in the water, surrounded by the endless white of a frozen Minnesota lake. Do you ever regret it? He asked suddenly. Taking me in when I didn't remember you? You could have left me in Montana, gone back to your life. I wouldn't have blamed you. You're my son. There was never a choice. But I'm not the son you remember. I can't give you back what you lost. No, I agreed. But you've given me something else. A second chance. A different relationship, but still a relationship. Still my son, in whatever form that takes. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad you didn't give up on me. Never. Not ever. His tip-up flag popped, and we both scrambled for the line. He pulled it in smoothly, expertly, and brought up a beautiful walleye. "Nice catch, Mikey," I said without thinking. He smiled a real smile, the first one I'd seen since he came home. "Thanks, Dad." And there, on that frozen lake under a gray February sky, with my son who was and wasn't my son, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in 26 years. Peace.